I went ahead and rented this Fujifilm X-S20 for about a week, and I used it on a photo shoot and also as a video camera like this. So I'm going to talk about some positive thoughts and some maybe not negative, but space that has room for improvement. Positive, let's start with that, the good stuff. It does have a 6K 30 mode. That's what I'm using right now. And that is 6K maximum 30 frames per second. So it's using the entire sensor. And actually the entire sensor, not 16:9 or DCI cut of it, the actual 3:2 full aspect ratio. Meaning you get all that resolution, but when you're doing videos like this, you do end up having to punch in to crop the top off. Or sorry, not punch in, just crop the top and bottom. Which gives you, most people aren't actually delivering in, no one's really delivering in 6K, but they are delivering in 8K. So like what I'm doing with YouTube is recording 6K, editing in a 8K timeline and then uploading it in 8K to YouTube so that it reads it correctly as 8K. And even though that's being upscaled, it's better than getting the next lower resolution, which would be downscaling it to 4K. Or it allows a lot of wiggle room for cropping or for stabilization, which inherently crops the image. And then also that 6K down 4K looks really, really good because it's oversampled, meaning that all those pixels get crunched down. And when that happens, just like when you look at a smaller image or a thumbnail on the internet, it always looks better because the noise floor is lower and it makes the appearance of noise lower and makes the appearance of sharpness even greater. Next up, it has true 24p mode. So instead of having 23.976 and then having to do drop frame, you can just have a pure 24 frames per second. And it's this little thing that visually is different, not really, but editing, you don't have to worry about drop frame. It's just so much simpler. It's 2024. We really don't need drop frame. All right, next up. Oh, this is a cool one because I rented also the Canon R7 a couple weeks back. And what happens if you're shooting in, let's say, 60 frames per second and you accidentally bump down the shutter speed to lower, like 1/50th, because it doesn't have shutter angle. It actually kicks the frame rate down. So what happens was I was looking at my footage and it looked really choppy, or not choppy, but it just looked like it was dropping frames. Then I realized, oh, well, it wasn't actually getting 60 frames per second, even though it's on a 60 frames per second timeline. So this is cool. Fuji doesn't allow you to do that. It just gives you a little dialogue saying, hey, you're shooting at 60 or you're shooting at 24. We can't go lower than 1/24th of a second. Streaming wise, you can stream 4K 60 over its USB-C connection. Haven't tested it yet, but that saves a ton of money because if you look at options that support 4K 60 input to your computer, they're quite expensive. Like from Blackmagic, what I ended up doing is taking one of the PCIe cards, getting external expansion housing for it that goes over Thunderbolt 3, then connecting it. It ended up being, I think, about $1,000 or something in total. And that's all free. So I don't know how much it compresses it or whatnot. Because I don't use it directly. I always edit my footage usually. I don't go directly to cloud or directly to live stream as much. But if you do, that is potentially it's big savings. Next up, you can do 1080p 240 frames per second. And haven't tried it yet, but I really want to make a project to use it. Yes, it's not 4K, so you are going to have quite a hit in resolution. But if coming from the Nikon Z6 Mark II world or Mark I, you're not getting that. I don't even remember actually if the Z8 or Z9 does 1080p 240. But it's something that if your video calls or you just want to do a really cool slow motion footage, that's going to look really nice. And then for the sixth one is the automatic vertical menus. So it's a feature that's just, I feel, coming up. The Z8, Z9 can do it. The R3 can do it. I don't remember if the R5 can do it. But if you see all your menus and then you start shooting vertically, buy it for your video or be it for your photos, all the menus, all the text, in other words, then flips. So you can read everything without having to sort of guess in your mind what it is or interpolate and go, okay, no, that's, yeah, it's ISO 5, whatever. It just flips automatically. And when you're in the thick of it, shooting, it's just really nice. It's one less thing to think about. Okay, negative stuff or room for improvement. The 4K 60 is cropped, so you're cropping into an APS-C sensor, so you're ending up at about a micro four thirds. Not the end of the world, but that does mean that you're not super sampling at 4K 60. And that's a big benefit that the A6700 has. You still get the super sampled 4K even at 60 frames per second of the full sensor, which is rad. No 4K 120, which is a little odd to me because it can do HD 240, but not 4K 120. So yet another benefit of the A6700. And I think that's going to be the sort of theme for this video. R7 versus A6700 versus X-S20, because this camera is the cheapest of the lot, $1,300, A6700 and R7, $1,400, all of them with no lens. Here's a specific one that could be fixed. I believe it would be on the macOS side. When you shoot uncompressed RAW photos, it is readable by your macOS Finder, i.e. when you hit your spacebar and click on an image in your Finder, it will pop up and you can see it in the macOS settings, preset settings of contrast and development settings. But if you choose the lossless compressed RAW, which I use, or the compressed lossy RAW, it's not viewable. It just shows you a thumbnail of a Fuji file, but no image. Of course, you can read it in your photo application, but it's something nice, especially if you're talking with clients and you're showing them, you just want to do a super quick view of it, or if you even have to send the raw file to them or your editor or whatever. It's a nice feature to have, which I think is just the only camera I can think of for a while that doesn't support it in macOS. So maybe we'll see that in a update for macOS very soon. I was on 14.5 Sonoma. Next up, no shutter angle, which is rather annoying. I don't see any reason why these processors can't support that feature. I think, and Fujifilm doesn't have a cinema line, so they're not protecting anything. So I really don't know why they haven't implemented that. I don't know if the most expensive X-H2S has it or not, or even their medium format line, but it'd be a nice addition. I'm sure if they wanted to, they could add it in a firmware update. And I'm running the latest one, firmware 2.01 right now. And all this is using the 18 to 55 millimeter lens, f2.8 to f4. So no shutter angle, though interestingly enough that I haven't seen on anything else, any other cameras, is that usually since it's in these mirrorless cameras, they're hybrids, you'll get like normally 1/50th of a second, and then when you go over to movie mode, it just stays in 1/50th, and you go, okay, well, it's so close to a shutter angle of 180 if you're shooting 24p. Why can't I just have that? Thankfully, Fuji does. At 150, you do one more click on your dial and you get 148, so an exact 180-degree angle. So in a sense, you do get shutter angle, just not visually in the menus. Another small one that is a bit of annoyance, and just, again, in speed of shooting, it goes down to only ISO 160, not ISO 100. And mentally, when I'm shooting and I have like f5.6 and ISO 100 in my mind, it's nice to be able to go to those really quickly, or just have them and not have to go, okay, well, ISO 160, then I have to push it down to f 4.8 or whatever. It would be nice to have those solid numbers as low as ISO 100. And as far you can see the actually low ISO or the software pushed ISOs, I think you can only actually use them in JPEG, because in RAW they're completely grayed out in every mode. And that's about it. I've already talked about my favorite part, really, what I like so much, is the 6K 30. And you can even do 6K 30 ProRes RAW externally via the HDMI. Though it is the micro HDMI. It would be maybe a snug fit to have a full HDMI-A, but I would like that. It's way too flimsy, micro HDMI. I can still using it too on even their R3 and R5. I don't know why, but as you can tell from my perspective and many on forums, it's quite frustrating. That's about it. You get what was it? Let me take a look. 350 megabit per second maximum bit rate for video in the 6K mode. And that's the highest bit rate period for the video, which is quite good because it's 422 10-bit, and that's in F-Log2 or F-Log, which are really nice log codecs or profiles. But so that puts you at about in between ProRes LT and ProRes Proxy. Since it is in all intra codec. It's not a long GOP or long GOP. So the equivalent at that resolution, 6K 30 with ProRes LT, you're looking at 500 megabits per second, and ProRes Proxy would be 180 megabits per second. So 350 is right in between. And that puts you at about, at 24p, gives you about 2 megabytes per frame. And to put that into perspective, if you're shooting raw photos per frame with lossless compressed, you're getting 30 to 36 megabytes. Uncompressed raw is 53 to 55 megabytes, and compressed raw is as low as 5 to 20 megabytes. So even with the compressed raw, the 2 megabyte per frame all intra is very much on the low side. So if you really want to push the limits of the camera, I haven't tried it out yet, but I'd grab myself a Ninja or Ninja Ultra Atmos unit and get that 12-bit ProRes RAW up to 6K 30 or 5.2K 60. And that 5.2K 60 would actually be what I would be looking for. And I'm not sure, it doesn't make it vivid on the Atmos website. If you need the Ninja Ultra, which is $800, or just the Ninja, which is $600 to do, you need the Ultra to do anything 8K 30, like from the X-H2, but you can get away with a $600 Ninja for that 6K 30, but it doesn't say if you need the Ultra for 5.2K 60. I think you might. Anyhow, that's about it. The only last word would be, I was comparing also, you really have, back to the comparison of the A6700 and R7, Sony has a 16 to 50, f3.5 to 5.6 optically image stabilized lens for $300, and Canon has an 18 to 45 for 4.5 to 6.3 stabilized lens for $300, and even Nikon has a APS-C size 16 to 50, 3.5 to 6.3 stabilized lens, all for $300. So you really have a $300 compact zoom lens option from all the big manufacturers. So I think the APS-C market is both really good and competitive, except from Nikon right now, because they're dropping the ball on it, because the Z8 and Z9 in full frame world, absolutely stellar, the raw 8K raw internal. But you have the Z30, which is the EVF-less camera, the ZFC, camera which does not have IBIS. The Z30 does not have IBIS, and the Z50 does not have IBIS, and nor do any of them have the internal log recording. So I think they're cheap, but they're really lagging behind in 2024. I think Nikon really needs to do a $1,300 to $1,400 APS-C camera that has IBIS and log internal with their new X-Speed 7 processor for that price range, and they'd be back in the game. But until then, quite lagging.